Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Recovery Spark KAC Partnership. If that's getting to be like an old record to you, that's great. That means you've been a regular and you're coming back for more, and means you're getting stuff out of here, and so I'd like to welcome you back. For those of you that may have never heard that welcome and greeting before, welcome. That means you're new to the group, and we look forward to having you back again. My name is Bruce Cladney, Executive Director for the Kansas Association of Counties. Got a lot of folks on the listserv right now, chattering back and forth, asking great questions, providing each other with good feedback and support, so appreciate that. If you want to be added to the listserv, please don't hesitate to send an email to me. You can see my last name here on the screen, Cladney, CHLADNY, at kansascounties.org. Just send me your name, your email address, and the county that you're in, and we'll get you added to the listserv. We're well over 75 folks on the listserv, and they chatter back and forth on a regular basis, asking each other questions, support, clarification, things like that. However, don't use the listserv as your official guidance request. That's not being monitored by the COVID Recovery Office. They have their official portal that you need to fill in a form and submit to them, and then they will get back to you with their official guidance. So as you can see, we've got 2 webinars scheduled for this week, and I've had several emails of people saying, hey, they got the same write-up for today and Friday. Are they the same thing? And no, they're not going to be the same event, the same write-up, but it's basically we're getting to that point in time where we're going to be doing a lot of question and answers, updates, things like that. And so with that, don't forget, we are recording the Zooms, so you can go back and review them. You've got them posted on the COVID Recovery website as well as the KAC website. And send the link to friends, colleagues, or anybody else that needs to see the videos. So with that, Vijay, I see you're on the screen with me today. So welcome and good luck, and take it away.
Thanks, Bruce. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody. I appreciate everybody jumping on today. I know this was an unscheduled webinar, but we wanted to give you all some extra time to ask questions and continue to engage with us as we get into the final stretch here to submit some critical reports for both your direct aid plan and your initial reimbursement reporting form. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Today's presentation will be very similar to what we've been doing so far. And by that, I mean we're going to be going through some updates from the Recovery Office. We will be talking a little bit about next steps as it relates to the forms. And then finally, we're going to be going through some frequently asked questions. One key thing that I'll note in today's presentation is that we did receive some additional federal guidance that was unexpected. So I'll give you some insight into that and what that means for you all moving forward. Again, we'll start with some updates, go into the guidance, and then finish with some time for frequently asked questions. And I'll go through the chat as we've been doing the past few webinars. To begin with some updates, we're continuing to expand staff at the Office of Recovery. You'll see some new faces on these webinars moving forward. I know that the Office of Recovery has been kind of a dual office between the governor's office and between the Office of Recovery, but as we've gotten a new executive director, we've gotten a lot more staff and we've gotten a lot more support and infrastructure. You'll be seeing some new faces on these webinars, as well as some new updates and processes as we move forward. But we're really excited about that. Our Executive Director and Secretary of Transportation, Julie Lorenz, will be on the Friday webinar for a brief introduction. So you all will be able to meet her there as well. Round 1, we've posted the FAQ from the last webinar on the website. It's a pretty lengthy one and includes a lot of information. So please look there as you continue to make decisions on your counties. So far, we've provided over 100 guidance interpretation responses. So I believe that if you've sent your guidance interpretation responses so far, you should have received a response, or you will be receiving one in the next couple of days. Again, we've gotten a lot of those, and we're continuing to respond to those. And I'll talk a little bit about kind of how we want to deal with them. I touched on this a little bit at the last webinar, but shifting some of the one-off related requests back to counties. But again, we're continuing to get through the log that we have and answer questions on the recovery@ks.gov email inbox. The other thing that I mentioned during the last meeting is that we're still looking at ways to be more flexible and practical in terms of approving your reports and plans before you make your direct payments or start implementing your programs. We haven't finalized what that flexibility will look like yet. We're hoping to do that within the next week, and so we'll let you know. But again, we understand that you want to start getting your funds out as quickly as possible, and that we need to be as responsive as possible in terms of our deadlines and getting you some responses back. And so I've hired a lot of new folks, and we're also looking at our processes and making sure that we can get that done in a flexible and practical manner. Finally, I know a lot of you are waiting or have gotten requests from outside stakeholders as it relates to round 2. Where we currently are is that our agencies are signing memorandums of understanding and implementing their processes needed to actually implement round 2 proposals, whether that be developing grant proposals or requests for applications or an application portal. And so all of our agencies are well underway of getting everything they need to get done to make those programs available to the public and get those funds out. So if you want additional information on what the timelines look like for all of those proposals, I would implore you to look at not only the State Finance Council meeting that we had last week to specifically approve public health, education, and economic development, but also look at for example, the presentation that was given at the Executive Committee this week and at the Legislative Budget Committee. All of those include additional information about what the timeline is for all of these programs, and we have specific schedules for when these programs will go live and how they plan on implementing them. So continue to look at the materials from our other Spark committee meetings if you'd like additional information on round 2. And as we have application portal live or we have additional information, we'll continue to put those in these webinars. But if you want to see a schedule of when things are due from agencies to start implementing, go look at the presentation from Executive Committee or from Legislative Budget Committee. And all of those presentations are again found on the covid.ks.gov website. So one key clarification, and I know this is a little bit new, and so I want to be very clear about this. So according to the federal guidance, if a subrecipient receives more than $750,000, they could be subject to a federal audit. And so that means that if a certain county received more than $750,000, they could be subject to a federal audit under the same requirements and processes of any single audit. And so what we've done is 2 things. One is we've put federal audit guidance on the covid.ks.gov website to help you all prepare. But also, we've clearly outlined here that you can set aside funds and use payment of funds for that single audit expense. And so you can set aside some money as it relates to implementing that or complying with that federal audit. And that is directly from the federal guidance. And so I wanted to outline that here. And again, if you want additional information, go on covid.ks.gov website, and there is some guidance on federal audits. But again, you can set aside funds at the county level to comply with those. Again, nonprofits can be reimbursed for business interruption caused by required closures. That includes things like income loss and can be eligible for public health related funds or expenses. And they can get money, and including nonprofits and small businesses, even if they did not close. And so as long as they can illustrate to you that their losses are due to a COVID-19 emergency, they can receive funds to cover those losses as determined by the county. And I know I mentioned that in the previous webinar, just want to reiterate that. A few things, and I mentioned I would go into this. So here's how we want to handle guidance interpretation moving forward. If you've already submitted your guidance interpretation, like I mentioned during the last webinar, we'll try to get you a response as soon as possible if you've not received one already. But the main goal of the discussion during last week's webinar was to say, we'd like you all to use the existing resources that we've provided you, whether it be FAQs, these webinars, the federal guidance, anything like that, and your internal legal staff, whether it be your county counsel or what have you, to start making decisions on individual requests and one-off expenses as much as possible. We're getting a lot of repeat questions or questions that we've answered in previous webinars or in previous FAQs. So we just want to encourage you all to look at those first. And for example, I know there was a question about buses during the last webinar. So we have said in a webinar and in an FAQ that any measures that are to facilitate social distancing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic are an eligible expense. And so if you as a county deem that buying a new bus to make sure that students are more socially distant is necessary to the COVID-19 emergency, then you can do so. So kind of taking the more general guidance that we've given and applying it to your specific scenarios is all that we're asking moving forward. And a way to do that is to just start with your necessary COVID-19 priorities and then determine what goods and programs are needed, not the other way around. And so ensure that anything that you are spending money on can reasonably be determined as necessary to combat the COVID-19 pandemic or its economic impacts or secondary impacts. And that's what we want you all to return to as you're making these decisions. And the reason we're doing this and trying to push it a little bit and create more of a partnership is that we are operating on the same level of guidance that all of you are, and we try to provide as much interpretation of the federal guidance as possible. But in order to ensure that you all can make the decisions that you need to make and get the responses that you need to get, we want to try to ensure that we're giving you the tools necessary to make decisions on one-off requests or requests from agencies or outside stakeholders as much as possible to streamline how we do decision-making as we get into reports being submitted, programs that start to be implemented. It's going to get a lot more busy and a lot more difficult. And so we want to make sure that we're giving you the tools necessary to make those decisions as you get them. So the last thing is we'll continue to provide broader guidance and answer questions on eligibilities, decision-making, but we want to ensure that you all are using the existing resources and to make decisions at the county level so it can happen quickly and it can happen efficiently. Like I mentioned before, the two things that are due on the 15th are the county reimbursement reporting form and the direct aid planning form. Both of those are on the website, and I'll go through where they are in a second. And I know that there's been some issues around some of the spreadsheets, and I'll go through what needs to be done to ensure there's no glitches here in a second. But again, these are the two things that are due on the 15th. The county reimbursement reporting form is for anything that you've already bought that you want to get reimbursed. The direct aid form is anything that you plan to buy or spend money on moving forward. So anything that you've used your own money to buy that you want to use CRF funds to reimburse, put it in the reimbursement reporting form specifically for the reporting period of March 1st to July 31st. And anything that you are budgeting for moving forward or want to buy or create a program for moving forward beyond July 31st, you would put in the direct aid planning form. Last but not least, before we get into federal guidance, we've talked a lot about what round 2 means for counties, but I want to underscore our thinking and thought process behind providing you all funds in round 1 versus keeping funds at the state level in round 2 and 3. The state funds are intended to address statewide priorities to combat the spread of COVID-19 and address the secondary impacts for the entire state. And so there are some costs that impact people across the state that it's better to centralize at the state level, whether it be large-scale investments in the state testing lab, for example, or funding a significant request for testing education, or creating a large pool for business grants or for broadband development. all of these things are large statewide priorities that we want to make a centralized investment for. The round one funds that we provided to you all are to address the community level priorities and impacts that you all are seeing on a day-to-day basis. So that could look different for each community. For example, some communities may have a few businesses that they know are critical to their communities that are really struggling. Then you can target your funds towards a business grant program. Some might have a private college or a nonprofit college, or may have community colleges or other institutions that are really necessary and critical to their communities that you want to provide grants to or reimbursements for or things like that. And so round one funds are meant to address the specific community level needs of your county, and then rounds 2 and 3 that are done at the state level are meant to supplement those by taking the, I think somebody has the, I just please avoid, please keep your lines muted and avoid interacting with the screen as much as possible, or sharing your screen, because I think we're having some issues with that. But anyway, as I was saying, continue to provide reimbursements to institutions at the county level. So if it's for example, if it's a community college or it's a nursing home or what have you, the state's investments are meant to supplement what you're already doing at the county level.
That was me, Vijay. Sorry about that. I bumped you off as sharing. I apologize for that. Let me get you back on here. Okay, try again now.
Hopefully, yep. Okay, perfect.
I apologize for that. I bumped you out. Let me.
Oh, you're okay. Totally fine. So again, continue to prioritize community level investments in things like business and childcare support, rent, utility assistance based on your community's needs, and then view the state as kind of a supplement to that and a way to address statewide priorities. So updated federal reporting requirements. So very shortly after I got off the webinar with you all, we received a notice from the federal government that they had instituted new reporting requirements. Obviously, this was incredibly unexpected and something that we were hoping wouldn't happen. It just adds to the existing reporting requirements that they've already given us, but it adds some additional detail that we were not expecting. And we're working with our federal delegation to ensure that any new round of stimulus or any just moving forward, that this doesn't happen again, because it's incredibly difficult for us and for you all moving forward. But what it does is it adds some additional project information, including the status of a project. It includes a requirement that any contracts, grants, transfers, direct payments of greater than $50,000 are to be reported, along with some specific indicators for each of those. Currently, we don't think that this is going to change anything as it relates to your 8/15 deadline. So for your first set of reports, you don't need to do anything differently. You can continue as you've been going and submit those reports as is. However, we do foresee that we might have to change the reporting spreadsheet moving forward to encompass a lot of the changes that we've seen. And so we're still reviewing it. There's a lot of information in it. And so we're working with our folks to get you all maybe a memo or just something more succinct that says, hey, here's how you should maybe change your accounting practices moving forward to help comply with the changed guidance. But as of right now, and for the 8/15 deadline, nothing needs to change. We'll take care of any different mapping that needs to occur or different classification needs to occur. But just know that moving forward beyond 8/15, there will be a different reporting spreadsheet that takes into account the new federal reporting requirements. So nothing for 8/15, but there will be an updated reporting spreadsheet moving forward. But we want to make you all aware that that came out on Friday. And that's a part of the reason there's some delay in how we're in some of the information that we're giving you, is because we want to ensure that we can get you a succinct information based on our current understanding of the reporting requirements. FAQs. So continue to use the direct aid template memo that's on the website, and I'll show you that here in a second. That includes information and definitions about what all of the tabs mean, how you should fill out the form, and gives you kind of a step-by-step of the best way to complete your direct aid template and what different terms in the direct aid template mean. So make sure to use that as you're filling out the template. And what I'll do now is go through and just explain where you can find all these forms again. And then I think I'll show you one issue that we've seen multiple times in filling out the form with the spreadsheet that may be helpful to show here. So it answers it for you all. Give me 1 second here. So hopefully everybody can see my screen. So if you go to County Resources, the direct aid form is here. The direct aid form memo is also here, which gives you kind of a step-by-step of how to fill out this spreadsheet. And then the reimbursement reporting template is also here. We've heard that there's some issues with some glitches in the reimbursement reporting spreadsheet. We've fixed those. They don't change anything as it relates to the actual spreadsheet, but I'll show you what we fixed. And it depends, and for some people it was already working fine, and for some people it wasn't. And so if it's working fine for you, you don't need to re-download the spreadsheet and redo your whole and copy and paste everything. Only if you are having a problem, you can use this updated version because I think it was working for some people and not working for others. So let me just show you the spreadsheet here in a second. So the thing that was giving folks trouble is this expenditure category and expenditure subcategory. And people were having trouble because they couldn't choose a subcategory. So in order for this subcategory to work, you have to first choose a category. And so I'll choose public health expenses, for example, and then I'll be able to choose a subcategory. Sometimes when you choose a category, reopening measures, for example, excuse me here. Actually, let me go up here. Public health expenses, it shows up blank. And so all you'll need to do is scroll up. For some reason, when you do it on Excel, it starts with the blank part of the list. So all you have to do is just scroll up and you'll be able to see all of the related expenses. Some of these don't have an expenditure subcategory, like the one I had just clicked. So for those, you just need to click the expenditure category, and if the subcategory doesn't pop up, that means that it doesn't have additional subcategories. Some of them do. So for example, if I did public health expenses, that has subcategories, and some of them, they don't have subcategories. So if it's not showing up, more than often than not, it just doesn't have a subcategory. And that's all we need to know for that expenditure. Some of them, since they're larger things like public health expenses, they have subcategories associated with them. So that was an issue for a lot of folks. That is fixed, and also it should be available as long as you click the expenditure category first. Let me go back to the presentation here. I think there were some issues maybe with the version that we sent via email. Please download the version that's on the website if you're having any issues. That's the easiest way to ensure that you're using the most updated document, but it should all work. And if you're still having issues, please let me know and we can go through it in detail and find out what the issue is. So the last few things before I get into the questions in the FAQ in the chat is performance or delivery of a cost must occur during the covered period. Payment can happen later as long as the goods or services are incurred during the allowed period. So if you bought PPE in November, you need to use at least a portion of it by 12/30, unless there's, I know it says, I need to fix it, it says 12/20 here, but by 12/30, unless there's a supply chain disruption. You can use that PPE beyond 12/30 as long as you used a portion of it in the allowed period. But if you're planning on hiring people or paying for contracts, all the services need to be incurred during the allowed period. So if you're paying for a building, any construction that happens beyond 12/30, unless you can clearly illustrate that there was a supply chain disruption or something like that, needs to be done before 12/30. Same thing if you're hiring a bunch of contact tracers, you can only pay them for the services they complete up to 12/30. So again, any goods or services must be incurred during the allowed period, but you can pay those contractors, you can pay those contact tracers beyond 12/30, but they can only pay them for services that they completed in the eligible period, if that makes sense. So the easiest way to think about it is if it was done during the allowed period of 3/1 to 12/30 and it's an eligible expense, then you can go ahead and pay for it. And if it's not, then it's not an allowed expense. Can you pay for utilities with CARES Act funding? You can help households with electricity payments just like you do rent assistance, but you can't pay for unpaid utility costs at the government level as a means of replacing your revenue. And what I mean by that is you can't use CRF funds to pay for your building, light, and heating expenses that you would have already paid for using your budget. You can, however, provide funds to households in your community through a utility assistance program or a rent assistance program, as long as you deem that necessary to help individuals with the impacts of COVID-19. If a salary employee is not substantially dedicated to COVID-19, but they spent time on planning, is that allowable? Yes, as long as you're only reimbursing salary costs for the time that they spent on planning activities related to COVID-19. In order to credit their entire salary, you have to clearly illustrate that they were substantially dedicated to COVID-19. And the federal guidance gives some examples of types of workers that would be eligible, but also says if you can illustrate that a majority of their hours were spent to directly combat COVID-19, then you can credit their salary. There were also some questions about, can I provide hazard pay? Yes, as long as you can deem that it's hazard pay specifically for employees that were substantially dedicated to COVID-19. You can't provide hazard pay across the board to everybody. You can only provide it to those in 4 activities that are specifically related to COVID-19. I know there was another question about, hey, I don't want to contract out to a private company to help administer the funds. Can I pay my county individuals or county employees additional funds to administer? There's no federal guidance that bars you from doing so. So if you want to pay your, if you want to use funds for administration of costs specifically for your county employees, you can do so. There's nothing barring you from doing that. The only thing that I would say is that when we say that we want you to budget 5% for administrative costs, that's a recommendation we're giving to help you administer the program. It's not a fee that you can charge everybody for, or charge subrecipients as you give them the money. It's a recommendation for, you can budget up to 5% for any individual program or for your entire allocation to help you administer and account for the cost. But I think some questions were coming in, can I charge people an administrative fee for providing them grants or things like that? Again, our recommendation was just 5% as what you should budget for total administration of the cost of the program. I won't go into this again, but again, I won't go into this fully, but you don't have to provide an EIN if it's not easily obtainable. And if you have employees where your entire salary is not allowed for reimbursement, but certain activities are, please list those as separate line items. You can't combine all payroll costs into one expense in your reimbursement reporting sheet. So as we've done before, what I'm going to do now is just to go through the chat and answer questions. Right before I do that, I'm just going to show you where the updated FAQ is. If you give me 1 second here. It's under County FAQ 8.5. All the questions that were not repeat questions or new questions from last week's webinar are answered here. So you can review that and get written detailed answers on all of the questions that you asked last time. So let's go through the chat a little bit here, and then if there's any other questions or anything like that, we'll definitely answer them at the Friday webinar. So first, I have for direct aid projects that are not funded in round 1 of Spark, can these be designated as approved projects for round 2? And how are round 2 projects and grant requests approved and by whom? So when we use the terminology rounds 1, 2, and 3, round 1 was the money that you all have gotten through the specific county allocations that we made. So in round 1 of funding, we provided $400 million directly to counties. So that is what you all are responsible for. Round 2 and round 3 are handled entirely at the state level. And so think of all the money that you've gotten in round 1 as the money that you have at the county level to administer and think about moving forward. And so if you're thinking about approving proposals or grant processes, you have to use the money that you've been given at the county level. You have to use the money that you've been given in round 1. The state will not consider county level proposals for its round 2 and round 3 investments. Those are handled entirely at the state level through programs like you've seen in the round 2 proposals, or through another process that we'll outline for larger statewide investments and proposals from outside entities in round 3. So again, round 1 funds are what we directly provided to you and what we're talking about in these webinars, and that's what you need to be focusing on. How are round 2 projects and grants requested and approved and by whom? It depends on the agency that's administering that program. For example, the Small Business Grant Program is administered by the Department of Commerce, and so they will put out the the request for proposals and the grant application, and then they will then provide awards for those funds. August 15th upload, our county has not transferred funds to any entity for reimbursements for expenses in March through July. Is it possible to report this data on September CRF? Yes, that's okay. That's fine if you want to submit it in a later report. Another question is, our county has designated a priority area of early childhood. Since licensed childcare was kept open, but many providers had a drop in enrollment, is childcare revenue an allowable expense? Yes. They are considered a business that you can provide funds for income loss due to COVID-19. We were told by one of our county officials that there's a new FAQ since the 731 FAQ. Yes, Nelson, there is that FAQ that I just showed you from 8.5. There's a question here, post everyone's guidance interpretation answers on a central site where we can all see them. The reason we haven't done that is because a lot of guidance interpretations are unique to the specific county. And so what we've opted for instead is taking them, analyzing them, and taking the most frequently answered guidance interpretation requests and putting them in our FAQs and answering them through these webinars. So I want to reiterate here that we've put frequently answered guidance interpretation requests on the website, and we continue to answer those through the FAQ FAQ process. The reason why we're not posting everybody's guidance interpretation is because there's a lot of information very specific to the counties and specifically related to that county's process. And so it's easier and more helpful to you all if we just aggregate the information that you all need and put it through an FAQ or a frequently asked determination document. I think, Bruce, there's a question about a listserv. So I'll let you all follow up on that.
Yes, I see that. And go ahead. I'm sorry, Vijay. Yes.
And is there an upgrade to communication systems that is used for sheriff department, fire districts, EMTs, and allowable expense? That is in one of the FAQs and is I forgot. I apologize. I don't know which one it's in, but I know it's in one of the FAQs. I believe it's in one of the FAQs last week. So I would check the FAQ document first. What we're going to do to make it easier for you all, and this is already in process, and we'll try to post this the next couple of days, is we'll take all of the FAQs that we've provided and put it into a single document, so you don't have to fish multiple documents to find answers to your questions. And so you can just Control F whatever you're looking for. So once we do that, we'll let you know. We're going to try to get that done by Friday. And so you won't have to jump through multiple documents to find your answers, but that answer is in one of the FAQs. In regards to employees that have had to quarantine, if an entity does not budget any administrative leave, all the quarantine time is over and above what is budgeted for administrative leave. So it would be the entire time for the employee be reimbursable. Our current interpretation is yes. So as long as you can illustrate that it's over and above what is budgeted, you can count that as a reimbursement as long as you can illustrate that it is due to COVID-19 clearly. Does the money that's set aside for federal audit need to be spent by December 30th? So our current understanding is that it does not. So you can set aside those funds and you can prepare for a federal audit by December 30th. But again, like I mentioned, that stuff is consistently evolving. And so for now, the answer is yes, treat as if you can set aside some funds for the federal audit when it occurs, but we will let you know if that changes. So do we actually have until August 17th at 5 p.m.? Yes. Use the next available business day. And JD, yes, we'll place all the guidance and FAQ into one document. When entering on reimbursement form, may we use a separate sheet for each entity we're reimbursing? Yes, you can use a different subrecipient expenditure sheet for each one. From the U.S. Senate version of the CARES Act, known as the HEALS Act, will extend the time frame for spending into fiscal year 2021. Chip, that is our current understanding of where the bill stands right now. Currently, the bill does include a provision to allow individuals to extend the time that's allowed for expenditure of funds. But again, that bill has not passed yet, and they are still in negotiations. And so as they are in negotiations, we continue to operate with the existing understanding that we have, and that is that all performance or delivery of costs have to be incurred by 12/30. And so once we hear what the bill is and we have some information on what it includes, we will provide that to you. But that is correct, that is in the current version of the bill. And when I say bill, I mean the federal coronavirus legislation that's currently being debated. What exactly is happening on or by 9/15 with the state approving or disapproving expenditures? So Leslie, so we are going to try to provide you additional information to give you some more flexibility. And so I don't have that with me right now, but as it currently stands, that counties have to get approval on both the reimbursement form and the direct aid form before moving forward and having the money leave your account. And so it is correct that you should take the position that you will not have any money be transferred to a subrecipient until you get approval from the state. And when I say flexibility, we're going to try to give you some ways to get funds out the door quicker and make the approval process more practical. But as it currently stands, no funds should be transferred to any subrecipient without getting approval from the state. And the reason why we're doing that is so we have an understanding that your expenditures are eligible, and we have an understanding of what folks are spending money on. And again, that deadline was set by the State Finance Council, and we will get you responses by our deadline, which is September 15th. And you will have an opportunity to change a part of your direct aid plan if it's something that is an ineligible expense to make it an eligible expense before 9/15. And so if you do receive word that something that you've budgeted for is not allowable, then you will have time to redo that. So I think there's some issues on the spreadsheet. So I would encourage you to check the online, the version that's online right now. So check that first, and if you're still having issues, please let us know. Is there a password on the last sheet? So there may be a sheet that requires a password that says do not use, and that sheet was intentionally hidden. And the reason for that is that's the sheet that all the formulas are based off of. And so anything that changes there will change the entire formulas. And there's nothing there that you need to fill out or anything. It's a sheet that's used to build all the formulas that are in the spreadsheet. So if a sheet does require a password, that's because the reason is because we don't want folks to be editing that sheet because it would mess up the formulas that are included. Again, on the HEALS Act and any federal legislation, currently what we do know is speculation, and so we are only going to give guidance and tell you exactly what is in law right now. And as soon as that law changes, we'll update our guidance and our processes accordingly. Question about hotspots, about full year's worth of service. You can only pay for, as of now, you can only pay for costs up until December 30th. And so again, this is one-time money. And so even if the hotspot will be used moving forward, you can only pay for it up to December 30th, because performance or delivery of all costs must be incurred by the 30th of December. Can a city-run utility be reimbursed for lost penalties that were waived for late payments? That's a good question, and I think the crux of that question is, are they considered a non-government entity that can be reimbursed for income losses? And so I don't want to give you an answer right now that because I want to check with our legal team here. Can a bonus or stipend be given to a USD employee for COVID time, and is that reimbursable? So bonuses are explicitly not eligible as of the June 30th federal guidance. So you cannot provide bonuses as of the June 30th federal guidance. And I just got word from our legal team here. So on the city-run utility, that is considered a government entity, so it is not eligible for revenue replacement or grants to fund income losses. So they would not be eligible for reimbursement for lost penalties that were waived due to late payments. So when the county CRF report is submitted to all of the subrecipients, reports also accompany that document. So if you are providing funds for reimbursements to a subrecipient, for example, a city or a school district, that needs to be included along with your report. And so there's a subrecipient tab on the reimbursement reporting spreadsheet. Any reimbursements that you're providing to subrecipients also must be included in that document. So there's a comment here about guidance interpretations. So I understand the point, Leslie, and I appreciate that. And so what we can do, and I think we can do moving forward, and it'll take us some time, is although I don't think we're going to provide the documents that we've given to everybody, we'll do a better job of condensing down the fundamentals of some of the guidance interpretations that we've done so far and give those out as a single document or included in the FAQs. And I understand that it would be helpful, and I know that some of you are even sharing them on the listserv, which you should continue to do if you want. In terms of volume for our staff and our ability to go through everything and make sure that we're providing clear information, I think it's easier for us if we condense it down to specific FAQs, but continue to share information among yourselves as much as possible. So I will, we'll get back and we'll take an inventory of what we've done so far and provide you an additional one of those sheets that says, here are some frequently asked guidance interpretation determinations. So if a school district ordered an item before July 31st, but have not been billed yet, but can prove the funds are encumbered with a PO, can we reimburse them? So, So I would say yes. So as long as they can illustrate to you that they've purchased that item, you can provide a reimbursement to them, and you just put it on whatever reimbursement reporting spreadsheet that coincides with whenever you get the correct information. Illustrate that the reimbursement was clearly for a necessary COVID-19 related expense and it was in the allowed period. Even if they haven't billed specifically yet, you can reimburse them. Just put it in the earliest available sheet. Going down the list here. We will provide you a notice that your reimbursement reporting sheet is approved as it currently stands before you make the reimbursements. So before money leaves your account, please submit your reimbursement reporting sheet and allow us to review that sheet to ensure that all of the reimbursements that you are providing are for clearly eligible expenses. And I know that there's going to be a lot of reimbursements on those sheets. And when I say flexibility, I mean we're thinking about a way to make sure that you guys can get an answer to those things quicker so you can get the money out of your accounts quicker. What is the percentage of funds that should be planned for the audit? I don't have that answer. I don't have that answer right now for you, but I can get you some guidance on what is traditionally required. So I think that there's some confusion here, or some indication that some counties have already transferred money to cities or schools, and so I understand that some folks have already done this, and so if you've already done this, that's okay. But please submit your reimbursement reporting form as required. We'll work with you on a case-by-case basis if there are any expenditures, but if you haven't done so, please don't let your funds leave your account before we've provided some sort of approval here. Let me go back up to Afton's question here so I clearly understand and answer it. Give me 1 second. On the county information sheet. I'm not specifically sure which sheet you're referring to that requires a password. We can follow up with you afterwards to try to find what sheet that means. So there's a question here about providing information as soon as possible before we reimburse. If there's something that you're not able to have information by August 15th, you can include it in a subsequent report. Can a school be recouped for sports officials because of reduced crowd, because of a limited crowd? Entry fees into sports is what pays officials and other expenses. I would note here that for public institutions, they are not eligible for revenue replacement, and so they can't be reimbursed for losses in income. Moving forward for tracking for future submissions, do we take items listed in the direct aid plan and move those to the reimbursement form to track those to submit at the appropriate due dates? You also said we need to explicitly describe how salaries are eligible. So when I say that, I meant so let's start with the first part of your question. So we'll be giving you a new form for you to track all of the expenditures that you make in your direct aid form and any reimbursements that you have moving forward. But the essential part of that question is correct. So your direct aid plan is kind of like a budget, and as you expend things, you'll move it to the other form and submit that form on a monthly basis to us to say, from my direct aid plan, here's what I actually spent for that month. And here's what everybody, my subrecipients or what have you, spent for that month. And so we'll give you another spreadsheet here to track your actual expenditures from your direct aid plan moving forward and any additional reimbursements you're providing. But again, essentially the process is correct. You'll transfer whatever you did spend into the reporting spreadsheet and report to us what you've done. Again, the direct aid plan is just a plan. It's a budget of what you think you're going to spend on, and those reporting sheets are what you actually spent money on. So when I said that you need to explicitly be aware that the salaries are eligible, I meant that if for individual, let's say that you aren't crediting an entire individual's salary towards the CRF fund, but you are crediting a certain amount of hours, we want you to put in the comment section, for example, hey, this is for planning purposes. And this is just a way for us to know and for you all to keep track of, yes, this was clearly for COVID-19 related expenses. And again, you can put any sort of comments like that that are helpful to justify payroll expenses in the comment section to clearly illustrate, hey, these individuals were health department individuals that were clearly dedicated to COVID-19, or this person wasn't entirely dedicated, but a certain amount of their hours were used for COVID-19 related expenditures. And so I'm crediting their hours here for COVID-19 planning. And you can illustrate that in the comment section. Jennifer, let me go back up here and find your question. I apologize. What about costs associated with PPE orders that were applied for in the direct aid form? Most of those items continue to be on back order. What if those orders are not fulfilled by 12/30? So here's where the supply chain disruption flexibility comes in. So if there is a supply chain disruption, and that's very clear for PPE in a lot of instances, there is flexibility beyond 12/30. So as long as you can illustrate, hey, I ordered it by 12/30 to be used by 12/30, but because of a supply chain disruption, I was unable to get those that PPE, that's okay. The federal guidance says you can get that PPE later, and that's okay. But you have to illustrate that your intention was to use it in the allowed period or a portion of it in the allowed period, and that the reason you weren't able to do that is because of a supply chain disruption. And PPE is one that we can easily justify. The other part of that I would add is if you know that you can't get it by December 30th when you ordered it, that's when there's an issue. And so when I say supply chain disruption, I meant, hey, I ordered it now. I was expecting to get it by December 30th, but I didn't get it by December 30th because of a supply chain disruption. So if you know already, hey, I'm not going to actually be able to get these goods by December 30th, as we read the current guidance, you shouldn't order those specific goods. But if you can clearly illustrate that I intended to, that it was supposed to get here by December 30th, but because of supply chain disruption, it wasn't, then it's an allowable expense. Leslie, I know that I understand and I appreciate the question here on the future months reporting. The reason we haven't given you that spreadsheet yet is because we continue to get reporting guidance from the federal government, just like I mentioned. And so whenever we're creating versions of that sheet and want to give you additional guidance, but as of Friday, we had a whole host of new requirements from the federal government. And so we want to ensure that when we give you a spreadsheet, that we aren't coming back and telling you and you all, hey, we actually scrap that completely. You need to do this, this, and this instead. And so I know a part of this is really frustrating and really difficult because you have a lot of people to answer to. And so what I can tell you is as soon as we get more guidance, we are taking that into account, and we will, before you get approval to start spending direct aid money or start spending your reimbursement money, you will have received a reporting spreadsheet and additional guidance of how reporting will work in the future. We're just editing and fixing that stuff as we get new federal guidance and to make sure that there's no issues. When I say direct aid plan and spending plan, those are the same thing. The direct aid form and the direct spending plan are both the same thing. Is it true that subrecipients will keep doing future Excels for us? Yes. Subrecipients will continue to fill out similar Excel spreadsheets for you moving forward. Some of our county departments are needing to order PPE now because they're running out of what they purchased. Can we reimburse expenses from August 1st when you approve our direct aid plan? So you can include that in your direct aid plan, and you'll have to include it in whatever you expend here, whatever you put in your reporting forms moving forward. So let's say you have expenses beyond July 31st that you want to reimburse. That's okay. Just put it in the next round of your reporting form. So the next reporting form will be for August 1st to August 31st, for example. So you'll take whatever you were going to reimburse for them and put it into that reporting form. So don't worry if you are getting a bunch of random requests for reimbursements now and you don't have time and it's not allowed in the reporting period. Continue to submit those in future reporting spreadsheets. We understand that requests come in at the last minute or needs change. And so the key here and the fundamental that I think I want to say continually is the goal of this is just to report what you've spent money on and let us know what you plan to do. So if an unforeseen expense comes up, just let us know via a subsequent reporting form. We just want to be able to know and account for everything that you credited towards this money, just like we would do with any other grant. There's a few questions here that I'll answer before we end. The first is, are reimbursements for business disruption costs allowable for any categories other than childcare, small businesses, nonprofits, and grants? The federal guidance says that the entities that are not eligible for revenue replacement or cost or business disruption are public entities. So public entities can't get money to replace lost revenue, but you can provide businesses or nonprofits, childcare, for example, money for income losses moving forward. So ensure that when you're providing an institution money for income losses, that they are not a public institution. And we've given examples of small businesses, nonprofits, childcare, and other recipients. You will submit one spreadsheet to us every month, and the reporting schedule is in that county reimbursement reporting spreadsheet on the summary page. It illustrates the reporting schedule moving forward. I feel like there's a few questions I might have missed. Bruce, let me know if that's true. There was one question on the Fema match. I don't have that answer for you in front of me right now. There was some additional flexibility as it related to the Fema match. And so I will put that guidance specifically in Friday's FAQ. So people have that readily handy, but I know that there's been some questions around, is the Fema match an allowable expense? I don't have that in front of me, but I'll put that in there. Are there any other questions, Bruce, that I'm missing here?
No, Vijay, I don't see anything that you skipped over. So I do believe that the Fema match is allowable. That 25%, I believe, is allowable. So have to double check on that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just want to ensure that there's no qualifications for that.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
So so that's all I have for today. I appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate everybody continuing to be patient with us as we get additional federal guidance and continue to provide you accurate reporting tools. But we hope to give you some more information here in next week, and we'll see you again on Friday.
Hey, Vijay, one last question just snuck in. Can businesses use funds to repay Cdbg loans? Ooh, that one you better check on.
Check on that. It's a good question. Again, I don't know what the federal rules are on using funds to pay for loans or funding from the federal government. My initial thought is no, because the specific guidance says that you cannot use funds to double count funds that have already been provided from the federal government. And since PPP loans and other loans are provided from the federal government, you can't use CRF funds to then plug the costs associated or the money or double count money from the federal government. So my initial answer is no, but I will get back to you.
All righty, sir. Well, by the time you're all done with this, Vijay, you are going to earn a PhD in COVID CARES Act money funding. You, my friend, you don't get stumped very often. So thank you again for all the hard work, and thank you folks for joining us. Don't forget, we have another Zoom plan for Friday at 10 a.m. And I hear that the Secretary, Lorenz, will be joining us. And then also, Vijay, will you be rolling out the new gentleman that's going to be joining your staff as well at some point in time to talk about?
Yeah. Next week, we've got some additional folks we're really excited about that we're bringing on to lead the county effort here. So I'll introduce everybody next week and provide everyone some more information. But as I mentioned before, I will be transitioning back to my original role. So you'll see a lot of new faces moving forward, but we'll continue to keep you updated on all these things as we get some updates in the recovery office.
Well, once again, sir, thank you so much for taking care of us and helping us along. And thank you, folks. Don't forget that the listserv is out there and it's available. I got several requests to join. Basically, and like Vijay said, use that as a resource to send questions out to your peers and your colleagues across the state. Has anybody had interpretations on? Has anybody had any issues with that type of thing? The listserv is a great way to share information with that. So, and thank you for the leaders. I noticed that there's probably 4 or 5 of you that have kind of stepped up as leaders on the listserv and answer a lot of the questions. And so I appreciate that. It seems like it's a real good tool for you folks to be using. So with that, we will let you all go. Have a great rest of the day, and hopefully we'll see you all on Friday. So be safe and good luck and take care.